to order. This is meeting number 21 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on International Trade. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order November 25th, 21. Per the Director of the Board of Internal Common on March 10th, 2022, all those attending the meeting in person must wear a mask, except for members who are at their place during proceedings. I'd like to take a few comments for the benefit of witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, please click on your microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those participating via Zoom, you have interpretation options at the bottom of your screen, either floor, English, or French. And a reminder that all comments have to go through the chair. So, to all our members, welcome to our Monday meeting. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, March 21, 2022, the committee is resuming a study on trade opportunities for Canadian business in the Indo-Pacific region. So today we have with us from the Embassy of Canada to the Philippines, His Excellency Peter MacArthur, the Ambassador. And from the Embassy of Canada to the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, His Excellency Sean Steele, Ambassador. For the High Commission for the Republic of Singapore, His Excellency John Dominique Urachi, High Commissioner. And from the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Canada, Henry Chi-Young Liu, Executive Director, Economic Division. So welcome to you all. We will start with opening remarks from Ambassador MacArthur. I invite you to make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be a transitional year for the Philippines. On June 30th, the country's new president, vice president, and many members of Congress will take office following May 9th national elections. At 110 million people, mainly young people, the Philippines is the second most populous country in the ASEAN region and ranks 7th amongst the APEC 20 member economies. It stands out in terms of its geostrategic position and as the world's third largest Catholic country. The capital, Manila, is head office for the Asian Development Bank, a regional institution in which Canada is the fourth largest non-borrowing shareholder. 80 finance projects represent business opportunities for Canadian firms operating across the Indo-Pacific. We share strong people-to-people bonds not found in any other Southeast Asian country. The Philippines consistently ranks as top 3 immigration source. There are an estimated 1 million Canadians of Filipino origin. Filipino migrants are crucial to Canada's labor market and economic prosperity. Canada is seen as an excellent host for overseas Filipino workers in sectors such as food processing and maritime shipping. They remit an estimated $2 billion Canadian back to Filipino families every year. Helped by strong macroeconomic indicators and stable credit ratings, the Philippines is expected to emerge from the pandemic as one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia. In 2019, GDP growth exceeded that of Indonesia and rivaled that of China. But 2020 saw a 10% GDP contraction due to the pandemic. However, GDP bounce back growth in 2021 exceeded expectations at 5.6%, and an economic outlook for 2022 this year is optimistic, as the ADB is forecasting growth at 6%. This has attracted the interest of some Canadian pension funds. To increase competitiveness, a recent series of economic reform legislation has been passed, including corporate tax cuts and steps to open up the economy and to establish a more predictable business environment. At the same time, with Philippine support, Canada and ASEAN launched FTA negotiations. Despite the pandemic, the Canadian-Philippine trade relationship continues to expand, standing at $3 billion, balanced roughly between $2 billion in merchandise trade and $1 billion in services trade. And Canadian direct investment in the Philippines is more than $3 billion Canadian, led by a long-standing market presence in the insurance and business processing sectors, as well as mining, software, engineering, and food sectors. Canada and the Philippines recently established a joint economic commission. The commission, which will include the voice of business through chambers of commerce, is going to provide a platform to foster closer business relationships in sectors where demand matches our competitive niches, such as aerospace, business aircraft and training simulators, together with maintenance, repair, and overhaul. Agriculture. The Philippines is Canada's second largest market in the region for products such as meat, pulses, oilseeds, grains, fish and seafood, animal feed ingredients, as well as processed food. Market access issues, particularly affecting agri-food exports, are an obstacle, necessitating constant vigilance and high-level intervention by the Embassy and the Government of Canada. Clean technologies, key opportunities include renewable energy and the emerging interest in nuclear power. Climate finance, early retirement of coal plants as an example of climate change interventions. And defense and security, continued military equipment modernization, particularly air and sea capacity, due to increased South China Sea security concerns. Infrastructure, Canada has launched a new government-to-government initiative to help our industry penetrate this market, leveraging Canadian Commercial Corporation, working closely with the Trade Commission Service and Export Development Canada. And information and communications technology, an example is our embassy efforts are sending a Filipino business delegation to the Collision Conference in Toronto later this June. 45 Filipino venture capitalists, investors, and tech buyers interested in subsectors such as medtech, fintech, cybersecurity. Creative industries and edutech sectors are also promising. And mining is back in business with the lifting of the open pit mining ban in an effort to source critical minerals. Canada's Towards Sustainable Mining CSR protocols are expected to be adopted by leading mining producers required to be more environmentally and socially responsible. And finally, education. The Philippines in 2021 moved out to become our fourth source of foreign students, benefiting colleges and universities right across our country. We saw a doubling in 2 years to more than 14,000 students right across Canada. But there remain challenges and risks such as lack of transparency, corruption, intellectual property violations, an inefficient court system, protectionism, and susceptibility to political interference. Competition from other countries is fierce. And finally, on the job creating investment in Canada front, I can report that Jollibee, Philippines' most prominent fast food chain and Asia's largest food service company, has opened more than 20 restaurants right across Canada. Each restaurant is estimated to create approximately 80 to 120 jobs and approximately $2.2 million in capital expenditures. So, Madam Chair, that completes my opening statement. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. On to Ambassador Stale, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I reported for duty as Canada's ambassador to Vietnam on May 3rd and presented my credentials on May 26th. I come to this position after more than 4 years as Executive Director for Greater China, experience which offers an important perspective on Vietnam and its region. After a difficult 2 years of pandemic restrictions and thanks to a remarkably successful vaccine campaign, Vietnam is leading economic recovery in the region. Over the short 1 month since I arrived in Hanoi, economic and social activity, including international travel and business, has accelerated at a remarkable pace. The successful hosting of the Southeast Asian Games in Hanoi last month exemplify this rapid opening. Economic and industrial indicators suggest that this country of almost 100 million people is poised to accelerate its growth in the near term, even under difficult external conditions. And Canadians, recognizing the opportunity and the need to diversify from difficult and unpredictable markets in the region, are responding. I've already met a number of Canadian firms and institutions on the ground, setting a common refrain. Vietnam is our best option for diversifying, and we want to be first back in the market. That shouldn't surprise. Vietnam is Canada's largest trading partner in Southeast Asia, 10th largest in the world. Since the conclusion of the CPTPP, bilateral trade is booming, reaching $10.5 billion in two-way trade in 2021, despite the pandemic. While most of that recent growth has been in Vietnamese exports, they do pave the way for a maturing trade relationship with many opportunities for Canada. In the agriculture and agri-food sector, including seafood, a growing middle class is driving demand for high-quality foods, and the CPTPP has leveled the playing field for Canadian suppliers. Canadian meat exports in particular have grown fourfold since the agreement came into effect in 2019. Vietnam is a country among the world's most vulnerable to climate change. At COP26, the government of Vietnam surprised many by committing to net neutrality by 2050. Its growing industry and energy demands make this commitment an enormous challenge and an opportunity for Canada and Canadian businesses to provide clean technology and clean energy solutions. Vietnam is also one of Canada's most important sources of international students. Education exchanges are rebounding quickly, and Canadian institutions see opportunities to grow both partnerships and student enrollment with Vietnam. Canadian firms have a significant presence in Vietnam's insurance sector, with major Canadian firms active and growing in the market. Opportunities in aerospace, life sciences, healthcare, and ICT are abundant and on the rise. In January 2022, Canada and Vietnam established a joint economic committee, a mechanism dedicated to advancing trade and economic cooperation between Canada and Vietnam. Meetings of the committee will provide an ongoing opportunity to discuss current and emerging trade and commercial issues and help unlock further potential. Now, Canada's commercial relationship with Vietnam is nested in and benefits from Canada's broader engagement in the country. In keeping with the comprehensive partnership launched in 2017, Canada's engagement with Vietnam has grown across the board. We now have established formal exchanges in diplomacy and foreign policy, defense and security, international cooperation with Canadian contributions to inclusive growth, climate change solutions, and regulatory affairs. Our embassy in Hanoi and Consulate General in Ho Chi Minh City are home to 110 employees from multiple government agencies, as well as provincial representatives. We anticipate continuing growth to match the demands and meet the opportunities for Canadian business in Vietnam. Now, Vietnam is a one-party state with significant government involvement in decision-making over the economy. According to the World Bank, achieving its ambitious goal of reaching high income status by 2050 will require further opening and institutional reform. Engagement at the government-to-government level across the range of tools at our disposal will be important for Canada's continued success in its vibrant market now and over the long term. In 2023, Canada and Vietnam will mark 50 years of diplomatic relations, well positioned for further cooperation based on our common interest. Thank you.
Very much, Ambassador. On to High Commissioner Irachi, please, for up to 5 minutes.
Bonjour, Madame.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Singapore is one of the most open countries for trade in the world. It is a developed, politically stable country of 5.4 million people that serves as a hub for regional trade thanks to its first-class infrastructure. The city-state is the region's main financial center, and it is easy to do business there. The rules are clear, and the rule of law prevails. English is the common language. All of these elements contribute to the fact that many Canadian companies have made Singapore their primary market in Southeast Asia, as well as their main activity pool for operations in the region. As a trade hub and part of the CPTPP, Singapore has essentially no barriers to entry for Canadian products and services. Despite the modest size of its market, Singapore offers significant opportunities for Canada due to the average wealth of its citizens, as well as its appetite for new technology. Also, with no natural resources and very limited space, Singapore must import virtually all of its food and energy. And finally, the top regional executives of foreign multinationals are based in Singapore, so purchasing decisions for their Southeast Asian operations are often made in the city-state. The pandemic did not spare Singapore, but its economy has already rebounded and already rebounded in 2021 with a GDP growth of 7.6%. In 2021, Canada exported $1.2 billion worth of goods to Singapore and imported $1 billion worth. Canada's exports now in services total roughly $1 billion and in imports are roughly $2.6 billion. In Southeast Asia, Singapore is the largest investor in Canada and the largest recipient of Canadian investment in the region. The Canadian High Commission has 85 employees from several departments, as well as representatives from British Columbia and Saskatchewan. Quebec and EDC have independent offices as well. The Trade Commissioner Service in Singapore focuses on agriculture, information technology, education, aerospace, life sciences, and sustainable technologies. We also manage a technology accelerator, a mentoring program, and investment attraction program. As Singapore hosts major business events and trade shows such as Asian Tech X last week, the Singapore Airshow, FinTech Festival, Water Week, etc., we organize hundreds of business matches with Singaporean and regional contacts around the activities of these events. Minister Ng visited us last week on May 24th and 25th, and announced Canada's intention to launch a design study to develop an ASEAN gateway, capitalizing on Singapore's status as a hub. Madam Chair, thank you for your attention to the region and to Singapore.
Now on to Mr. Liu for the Taipei Culture and Economic Development.
Honorable Chair and distinguished members of the committee, good afternoon. Bonjour. My name is Henry Liu, Executive Director of Taipei Economic Cultural Office in Canada, based in Ottawa. Firstly, we welcome the timely study which will contribute enhancing Canada's ties with the Indo-Pacific regions, including Taiwan. The bilateral economic relation between Taiwan and Canada is growing strongly. According to the Statistics Canada, our two-way trade surpassed 10 billion Canadian dollar in 2021, growing by 39% compared to 2020. This ranks Taiwan as Canada's fifth largest trading partners in Asia. Taiwan is also Canada's 16th largest exporting market globally. Indo-Pacific region will be the engine of global economic growth. Thus, commitment to closer engagement with Indo-Pacific partners is more relevant than ever. Canada has initiated an Indo-Pacific strategy, while Taiwan has launched its new southbound policy to boost our ties with the country of South and Southeast Asia. These two policies are quite complementary and will open new avenues of cooperation. Taiwan's long-standing partnerships with Canada is critical to our mutual objectives and shared interests, including our efforts to work with like-minded partners to safeguard freedom, democracy, and human rights, as well as to stimulate inclusive prosperity through economic cooperation and trade in the Indo-Pacific region. We can strengthen this synergy by providing our economic operators a set of more transparent, predictable, and facilitating trade and investment rules. On January 10, 2022, our trade ministers agreed to begin exploratory discussion as a first step towards potential negotiation for bilateral investment agreement, known as FIPA here. We hope that Taiwan and Canada can formally launch negotiation on a FIPA soon. Taiwan is the world's 18th largest importing country, with 23 million consumers of high purchasing power. Canada can benefit a lot by more favorable market access into Taiwanese market. Taiwan officially submitted its accession application to the CPTPP last September. Taiwan is committed to upholding the high standards of the CPTPP. We respectfully request for Canada's support for Taiwan's accession application. Taiwan's CPTPP memberships and FIPA with Canada will help increase regional economic momentum and bring Taiwan-Canada trade relations into the next level. In this era of geopolitical uncertainty and supply chain realignments, Canada and Taiwan can work together to increase their supply chain resilience. Canada has long been a reliable and secure source of quality agricultural products for Taiwan, bringing our consumers more diverse choices and enhancing our food security. In addition, Canada's budget 2022 proposed up to $3.8 billion in support over 8 years to implement Canada's first critical minerals strategy. Already, Taiwan's increasing demand of critical minerals has attracted more imports from reliable sources, including Canada. Canadian export of cobalt to Taiwan grew 186% in 2021 compared to the year before. Canadians' cobalt market share in Taiwan increased from 3% in 2012 to 25% in 2021. Taiwan wished to expand its relation with Canada as our close friends, democratic partners, and trusted ally. We look forward to continued engagement with our Canadian partners to sustain and strengthen our bilateral relation. Thank you very much for inviting me today. I will be happy to answer your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liu, and to all our witnesses. On to Mr. Lewis for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. Very in-depth testimony today, and we have a lot of work to do, no doubt. Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Liu, and Madam Chair, just so you know, all of my questions will be directed to Mr. Liu. I guess the first one I would go on with this, probably the most important one, at least for my riding of Essex, with regard to microchips, sir. And I do believe it to be true that Taiwan is the largest producer of microchips in the world. And man, oh man, could we ever use a bunch of microchips to get our vehicles on a road. I'm wondering what can we do? What studies should we be going after? What can we do as a country? Perhaps it's the critical minerals that you were speaking to. How can Canada help Taiwan so that we can get those very, very necessary microchips to our foreign soil, so that we can keep our auto industry moving?
Thank you for the questions. I think this is a very important question, especially when Canada is going forward to its EV industry, electrical vehicles. There will be more microchips in your cars, so which means that the demands of the microchips will keep on going. But Taiwan can also, in the same time, the supply chain of microchip is very long and complicated. So I would say that there's a lot of opportunity for Taiwan and Canada to work together. For examples, if we have the largest company from Taiwan, TSMC, already has design centers in Canada. And that's in addition to the US, this is the only one in America continents. I have visited the research center and asked the same question like you, and I was told that first, I think there's a lot of mutual support that Canada and Taiwan can have, because, for example, I think when we are moving into the next stage, you want to incorporate more technology into the microchips. So there will be multitask. For example, Canada is very good in AI, but how do you incorporate AI into the chips? That would be very important. That would be the determining factors of your competitiveness. So in this case, I would say that the software engineers should work directly with the Taiwanese chip makers. In this way, there's no need to go through very complicated different layers of suppliers. In that case, you can have your design already embedded in these microchips, which will means that Taiwan can provide the microchips, which is really reflecting the Canadian technology and making sure you have the leading edge. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Madam Chair, through you, back to the same witness, please. So when we talk about containers, I understand it also to be true that Taiwan is one of the biggest suppliers of containers. And so we can have all the microchips in the world, but if we can't get them across our oceans back to Canada, it's not going to do us a whole lot of good. So I only make that as a statement because I realize there's a major shortage of containers across the world, something that I would have never thought I would have seen in my lifetime. Madam Chair, through you to the witness, please. I understand also that the paperwork and administration, red tape, the challenges that are slowing the supply chain between Taiwan and Canada. Can you please expand on that, sir?
Right. First, I still want to reply the question on container, because as far as I know, there's no container shipments of microchips. Microchip has to be using the air freight. So that's why I think during this pandemic, I think Taiwan is really doing good. Even in the year 2020, we still have continued economic growth. So because of we have still keep this air freight going smoothly. And regarding to the supply chain bottleneck, I think even though we do have a very strong sea transportation capability, but the problems happens in the destination. So that's the thing that we cannot do very much. I hope that we have receiving a request from our colleagues on how to improve this phenomenon. But I would say that we can only watch how our trading partner can solve their problems. But in the meantime, I do encourage that Canadian could engage in more discussions on the paperless trading or on the constant cooperation so that we can really to go on to the next levels to make sure we can reduce the bureaucracy, as you mentioned, for the traders, which is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, back through you to the witness, and if you'll just keep it within about 1 minute, please, sir. I have 2 more questions left, both important questions. The first one is, so as China continues to flex its muscle in Taiwan, and let's call a spade a spade. It's happening. What can Canada do to help?
In my statements, I already say that I think Canada is a country that should be friends for everybody, but you should stand also on the side of the rightness, which means that I think there should be no hesitation to engage Taiwan economically, for example, on the FIPA or on the CPTPP. I think this is the way that Canada should act as a model that to support the high levels of trade liberalizations and encourage Taiwan to be a part of those agreements. So I think this will be the best way that to show that Canada has its core values in its trade policy.
Thank you very much, and I know I've only got about 30 seconds left. Very, very quickly, Madam Chair. Through you back to the witness. So I just want to make a statement that I do understand to be very true, that Canada is only about 1% of Taiwan's global trade, and so with Taiwan being a partner in CPTPP, it's a mouthful. What percentage do you think that could grow by, sir?
Well,
thank you, Madam Chair.
That's a very big ask, but let me take examples of New Zealand. When we have the first free trade agreements, we have the agreement with a country which export a lot of agricultural products. But still, so I think the negotiating outcome is that Taiwan liberalized the markets of 99.5%, which means that there's a lot of sensitive products that we have liberalized the trade. For example, like deer veve, maybe you don't know the product very well, that we do use that products, and the tariff rate is more than 1,000%. And in fact, we are going to liberalize that products just in the recent years. So totally no tariff. So, but this means that our determination to go for a free trade country, because we do think this is long-term benefits of Taiwan and our trading partners. Thank you.
Mr. Virani, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And this is my first time taking the mic today, and I just want to acknowledge for the record that today is the 1-year anniversary of the death of the Afzal family in London, which is a matter of concern for all members of Parliament. And there are commemorations taking place to not just think about that family and that loss, but also to take action on Islamophobia. In terms of the witnesses, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here, those who are present, Mr. Liu, and those joining us virtually. I want to start perhaps with Mr. Sean Steele, the ambassador for Vietnam, and just touch upon something that you mentioned, because I seized upon it when you indicated that it was with some surprise that the international community noted that Vietnam had made that commitment at COP to achieve net zero by 2050. Obviously, there's a lot of synergies there between our government's position on net zero and tackling climate change and what Vietnam is embracing. Can you talk to us a little bit about solar in particular? Because we're conscious of the fact that Vietnam is the second largest producer of the solar photovoltaic module. The Canadian share of electricity production from renewables is rising during the last decade. Where can we sort of tap into that sort of commonality of purpose and of interest using Vietnamese technological know-how to leverage further aspects of our trade in the renewable sector? So over to you, Ambassador Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indeed, Vietnam has accelerated not only its production of photovoltaics, but also its implementation of clean energies. It's a country that's still very much reliant on coal. And that's one area where Canada has begun to do really, really good work with Vietnam is helping to phase out coal. While they've made great strides in both wind and solar implementation, coal continues to rise. And so the commitment that the Prime Minister made at COP26 to be net net zero by 2050 surprised many because of this growth. And the estimates are that not only does Vietnam need to phase out of coal and replace that energy source with something else, but their demand for energy is growing at least 10% year on year. So there's a huge demand for energy infrastructure and energy generation. I would note here that we already have a leg in. Given that we have a comprehensive relationship with Vietnam, we've been working through the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, and have implemented a pilot project for offshore solar, which is really exciting. So with these ins and already having a way to work with Vietnam on solar energy, I think the next step would be to look at that supply chain. And we know, certainly I know from my past experience, that supply chains for photovoltaics and solar power are fraught, and forced labor can be an issue in those supply chains. So working with Vietnam to transfer some of that investment and some of that linkage from countries like China to Vietnam, I think is already happening, something that we can facilitate.
And I just say, just on that point, I mean, obviously it was critical that we put our governmental support behind the forced labor bill that just came out of the Senate, Bill S-211. We've also committed to dealing with forced labor in the supply chains as part of Minister Regan's mandate letter. And also powering past coal, as you directly noted, is something we've been working on for the last 3 or 4 years. If I could just pivot to something and ask both yourself, Ambassador Steele, and also Mr. Liu, if you could comment, because you raised it directly, Ambassador Steele, about the sort of international students as an aspect of our engagement across borders. And Mr. Liu, you sort of addressed it slightly differently, but you said sort of Canadian software know-how and our engineering expertise and AI expertise we can sort of leverage that to develop the relationship with Taiwan. So I immediately thought of Waterloo Engineers near my hometown of Toronto, for example. But if both of you could just take a turn at addressing how do we sort of leverage ties between our educational institutions and our students as an aspect of trade, and how that can turn into sort of more positive trade development. So perhaps Ambassador Steele and then Mr. Liu.
Indeed, Madam Chair. Yeah, with Vietnam, our education exchange had started with student recruitment. High demand for high quality education in Canada has driven a large number of Vietnamese students to Canada. In fact, pre-pandemic, Vietnamese students were the third largest source of students, international students to Canada. That's tapered off a little bit with the pandemic. I think they rank now 5th as a source. But what's kind of lagged behind that, although I think it's typical that relationships in education start with the student recruitment, is the partnerships between institutions. So I think one thing that we will need to look at a little bit more is how do we promote institution to institution linkages, not just in terms of student recruitment, but in terms of research partnerships and linkages that way. And my colleague from Taiwan can speak more about the experience of Taiwan, because I know that those linkages are already very strong in Taiwan.
Thank you for the questions. I will answer in 2 prongs. One is that in the education of language, which is really important for the first step for the Canadians' talents to know Taiwan better and Taiwan to have more exposure in Canada. Our government has announced that Taiwan will be a bilingual country in 2030. And in fact, at this moment, Canadians' office in Taipei, they are very much engaged in this with the school in Taiwan. I believe they have signed about 30 MOU, so that the Canadians' campus will provide long distance, or in the future, I believe there will be a physical exchange of students. So we hope that Canada will be one of the important sources of English teacher and trainings for our language skills. And the second is on the software talents. In fact, we have been promoting very heavily on the Contact Taiwan initiative, which we will, in fact, we are talking with different universities, and hopefully that your young people would like to work in Taiwan and to learn those the different fields of manufacturing. So perhaps then we could have really people to more people engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Savard Tremblay for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses, and thank you and salutations to all of you and to my colleagues. My first question is directed at the Ambassador to Canada to the Philippines, Mr. MacArthur. Within this study, we've received witnesses from the International Coalition for the Defense of Human Rights in the Philippines, and they expressed concerns regarding the human rights situation in the Philippines, more specifically in terms of exactions by and extraction by mining companies. We know that 75% of mining is Canadian in the Philippines, and there are 6 companies operating in the country. How can we ensure that Canada and Canadian corporations will not be accomplices in any human rights abuses in terms of operations in the region?
Question. Indeed, that is something that we monitor very closely, Madam Chair. So I'm happy to report that the Mining Association of Canada over the past several years has been developing in a very methodical manner the introduction of the Towards Sustainable Mining Protocol for corporate social responsibility with leading mining companies, directly with the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. I've been involved through webinars through the pandemic for the introduction this new approach to support environmental and labor relations and community relations. And indeed, this is in response to President Duterte when he was elected in 2016, essentially closing down the sector until he said, quote unquote, Australian and Canadian corporate social responsibility protocols are adopted. And that is indeed happening. These past few months, external auditors are being trained in order to ensure that this is done. So as the mining sector opens up for critical minerals needed for renewable energy, for example, nickel, cobalt, copper, gold, I can assure you that Canadian firms, B2Gold has just won an award just in the past couple of years for its exemplary treatment of workers and so forth. Some of what is appearing in the media is not completely correct. And our job is to meet with companies and to see how they're doing. So we are very conscious of some of the criticism that's being launched at the Philippines. Much of it responds to artisanal, informal mining sector operations by local Filipino companies or by companies from other countries, such as China, where those responsibilities are not being taken fully in the spirit of the need to be corporately responsible. There have been mining accidents in the past. Legislation has been adopted by the Philippine Congress to prevent those accidents. Some of them have involved foreign companies, including Canadian companies, in the past decades, but corrective measures have been taken. And I'm pleased to say that Canadian industry is stepping up and helping not only Canadian firms, but other foreign firms operating in this country.
Merci. J'interrogerai maintenant
Thank you. Thank you. And now I have questions for Mr. Liu. I have met some representatives of your office, some of your colleagues recently, and we were told of concerns because if you talk about commerce with the Indo-Pacific region, you think of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, of course. And we heard concerns from your colleagues about the potential entry of China and the consequences this could have for Taiwan in terms of that commercial zone. Could you tell us more about this, please?
Thank you for the questions. I think our concern is more about how the case of Taiwan can be taken. And regarding to the case, I think Taiwan, just like Canada, we welcome any country, any economy to participate in CPTPP as they are committed to the high standards. So we are but I think we have submitted our application last September. So for now, it's already past 6 months. So of course, I think Taiwan is very anxious to know our progress, and we hope that our case will be handled in a very professional and based on the merits of our applications. In fact, we have done more advanced in most others applicants. For example, so we have already amended our law. Even we are not starting our negotiation yet. So we are doing this to show our commitments. And so far, we are still wondering when will be our case to be taken. And we just trying to make sure that our case is not to be overly political size. We hope that all the members of CPTPP will live up to its commitment that they welcome any country members, economies who are willing to satisfy complying with the high standard of CPTPP. Thank you.
Croyez-vous actuellement
Do you believe that you're currently in a good position to be able to join the partnership?
As I say that we have reviewed all the details of the agreements. So that's why we engage in this law amendment. So it's as you are the parliament members, you know how difficult it is to pass any law amendments. But we have done this even several years ago. So I think once the CPTPP is concluded, we study it very carefully. So we want to compare what is the provision we are not live up to the standards. So that's why we passed 22 amendments to make sure we are able. On the market access commitment, just I say that even with agriculture exporting country, we have already committed more than 99.5% of our market. So I believe that according to the standard of other CPTPP, I believe that Taiwan is one of the most committed members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Massey for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for our witnesses. First to Mr. MacArthur. Just want to get the status of, there's been some issues raised with the Philippines with regards to human rights, everything with regards to how they're dealing with organized crime and also a number of different things, but also, too, to Canada in 2019 and before that, we were dumping garbage in the Philippines. It required the president to actually call Canada out on this, and garbage was shipped back to Canada. I just want to confirm whether or not we've ceased and desist from that. We had an international treaty before the Basel Agreement, which we were not enforcing through a clause. Just curious as to whether or not that still lingers as an issue for our country.
Madam Chair, in answer to the question, I'm pleased to report that that garbage issue was resolved 3 years ago, almost exactly, through interaction and negotiation between our two governments involving the embassy here. After the private dispute, recourses had all been exhausted. You'll recall that the Canadian exporter was bankrupt, and there was a technical legal issue going on between private parties. Finally, when the two governments were allowed to come in and solve the issue, we solved it. So to answer your question, there has been no further repercussions. The Basel Agreement's in force, and I'm not aware of any plastic issues in this country from any foreign supplier. So that is done. On human rights, I'm happy to report as well that Canada continues through our values agenda to press quietly behind closed doors, often with like-minded countries, the need to enforce respect for human rights. This is a lot of what we do. I was just at an event yesterday in support of human rights publicly with NGOs and the Commission for Human Rights, which is a government of Philippines body. But the United Nations has signed a joint program on human rights with the Philippines government involving the Justice Secretary, the Foreign Secretary. I was at a briefing by the UN just a few days ago, and there are 6 working groups, including violation by police of human rights. There are court cases starting against individual police. This is a big change, and the Philippines will be in Geneva in the coming months, having to face down UPR and other UN Human Rights Council initiatives. So very much in play, and I'm happy to see that the United Nations, which we're of course members of, is reinforcing the charge to make sure that people are accountable. In fact, 2 UN rapporteurs will be visiting the Philippines, which is something that hasn't happened for many years. The government here is opening up to, for example, taking more of a mental health, human rights approach to narcotics difficulties that the country is facing.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I guess, because if we're going to raise the expectations of the Philippines to deal with some of those issues that we have concern, I guess what I want to have is reassurances about other Canadian companies' investment and the government being more proactive. Because we shouldn't be shipping, that was terribly embarrassing that we were caught in having to actually subsidize the return of of garbage, and we shouldn't have been doing it anyways. For so many different reasons. What assurances do we have that there's going to be more of a proactive approach to preventing Canadian companies and businesses that want to exploit weaknesses in trade agreements or lack thereof for this type of activity? Because I think that if we're going to have expectations, then they should have expectations back on us.
Certainly, as I said, corrective action has been taken. We're more vigilant. Various departments at both sides of the Pacific are involved. I can say when I was ambassador in Indonesia, foreign countries other than Canada were exporting plastic garbage against regulations to Indonesia. So this is a practice that unfortunately has occurred. But this controversy, this problem has resulted in people paying much more attention to the issue. So I don't see any risk of this further approaching. I can say that Canada has a very positive profile, one of the best I've seen here in the Philippines in terms of its corporate social responsibility and our companies here right across the board in services and in goods production. Some are moving here, China plus one strategy, where they have an operation in China, but they've decided to put a second operation somewhere else in ASEAN. They're often choosing the Philippines because of its labor force and it's a democracy. It's good to see that on human rights, for example, gender equality, LGBTQI rights relative to other countries, being a democracy, a strong NGO sector, and a vibrant media that Canadian companies are functioning here quite successfully without any of those type of issues. That was a bad case, but lessons have been learned from it.
Yeah.
And
I only have limited time, so I have one last quick question.
Yes.
Do I have time, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
We have a tremendous Filipino diaspora here, and I think that there's probably more work that can be done to engage them in terms of economic development on both sides. Is that something that is fair to say? I think that it's underutilized. That's just my opinion from the work that I've done over the last number of years, and I think that this is one of the exciting opportunities that we have on both sides.
Madam Chair, I totally agree. It's a very good point. These thousands of students who are coming to Canada from the Philippines, many are emigrating to Canada. They are an investment, a generational investment. They will become business people, scientists, industrialists, and know each other's countries, Canada and the Philippines. So I think it's a very good investment in the relationship. I think there'll be some return positive benefit, but it'll take generational impact.
Thank you very much. Mr. Martel for 5 minutes, please.
Oui, merci. Alors, je remercie les témoins.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here with us today. Mr. Liu, my colleague has just talked to you about the importance of microchips. Clearly, this is a very significant geopolitical issue. But we know that Taiwan's safety is always threatened by China in these times. So I would like to know, from your point of view, how would China perceive the fact that Taiwan would join the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
Thank you for the question. It's really difficult to answer, or I don't think that I could answer for the other persons about how they perceive our entry. I would say that regardless of how the other applicants perceive, I think we have to proceed. Just as I say that we proceed on our own merits, and I hope all the members can do that as well.
Oui, mais vous pouvez pas me donner votre feeling un peu? Je sais que vous pouvez pas répondre à leur place.
I know that you can't respond on their behalf, but you couldn't give us your feeling about it? I mean, you must have some idea.
The feeling is that just like every Taiwanese, I think we are from a very small economy, that we are always doing things very challenging. For example, I have been posted in Geneva in our WTO mission for 6 years. I think we still, even as a member, we don't take everything as granted, because even we are already members, we are always trying to fight for the equal right. So I think, but this has been a culture in Taiwan. I think we believe the equal right, not only international arena. I think what we can do, controlling our hands, is that we make sure Taiwan is a country of equality. So we respect the gender issue, women issue, SME. So we want to make sure we reflect the core values, and hopefully that we gain more support from the others. I think that's more important.
Alors, Alors, Monsieur Liu,
Well, Mr. Liu, how do you think Taiwan acceding to the Trans-Pacific Partnership would benefit Canadian business?
I would say that currently, I think we are very complementary economy because of Taiwan is agriculture import countries. So for that, currently still, I think agriculture products still have the most highest importing barriers. On the other hand, if we look into the future, I would say that Taiwan is also a net energy importing country. We import 98% of our energy. So we have been importing not only coal, petrol, but also the LNG. I believe that in the future, Canada can be a source of the clean energy for Taiwan. For examples, like your hydrogen's developments, I think that would be another very potential areas. And as I mentioned about the rare earths, as Taiwan is developing also its EV industry, I believe Canada has everything to offer what Taiwan can use. Yeah.
encore pour vous, Monsieur Liu, parce que
Another question for you, Mr. Liu. It's very interesting to hear you speak. Again, I would like to know, first of all, what can Canada do to ensure that Taiwan join the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
PTPP is an organization of consensus basis. So it is not a single member can do anything, can control anything. I think, but Canada is a country which I value very much. I think you are not trying to be the leading power, but you want to be the glue of a consensus. I think Canada has been very good. For example, even in WTO, Canada is the most vocal groups of Ottawa Group, which are really helping WTO from stopping. You are making WTO agenda still falling. And in the CPTPP, that's the same way. I think Canada can work with other like-minded members to really to make sure everybody can work on the same basis to support Taiwan.
Monsieur Liu, quel rôle
Mr. Liu, what role can Canada play to protect Western interests of Taiwan?
I think I can only answer in economic terms. I would say that to make Taiwan secure, to make Taiwan strong, which will also make others strong as well. Because I think the specialty of Taiwan's industry is not we can make everything ourselves. In fact, Taiwan's specialty is that we enable others to make things. So when you are using the Apple, when you are using the something else, Taiwan is helping other country. For example, like Lululemon's use the fabrics from Taiwan. Taiwan is the largest supplier. But we are not good at selling Lululemon's dress. But we are very good at helping Lululemon to be successful. So other industry is the same way. So I believe that we can do this by keeping our economic tie very strong.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Martel. No, even over 9 seconds. Yeah. Well, I was giving him Mr. Liu as much time as possible to answer the questions. Mr. Sheehan for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and really appreciate it. In listening to your testimony, and thanks to all our presenters for some very, very important testimony as we explore these opportunities for mutual benefit of that particular region and Canada. A lot of the questions that I've been asking, are around climate change. I was in Singapore for an ASEAN conference many years ago, and it was the High Commissioner at that time, Lynn McDonald, I believe, who had drawn the attention of some of the work that Singapore was doing along with those ASEAN states around climate change because of the concern for obvious, health perils and deaths that have been resulting in various climate disasters across the area because the whole area is coastal. A lot of the area is coastal. And, resolved, like we are in Canada at seeking clean tech solutions. So my question through you, and I'll start with our friend here that's with us today about clean tech opportunities. Mr. Martel has started talking about some of the clean tech opportunities, but what kind of clean tech opportunities do you see as opportunities? And then I would like the rep from Singapore and the rest to chime in as well if there are time. So thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think the most potential clean tech technology is from the EV because of, in fact, Taiwan is good in information technology, and Canada is very good in your auto industry. But when we are trying to clean up this automotive industry, you need information technology as a support. So I would say that this is something that, which is the most important economic sectors that Canada and Taiwan can share and support. And there will be, in fact, there will be visiting delegations coming to Canada later this year, and my office support fully of that efforts. As I mentioned also about hydrogens, because hydrogens are a little bit behind the schedules, but I believe that hydrogens with the developments of liquefy, which is be able to provide it long distance, I believe this will be as potential as the LNG in the past. Thank you.
And are people online?
Madam Chair, thank you for I appreciate the question. So with regards to clean tech opportunities in Singapore, we do that is an area of focus for us, and we help quite a few SMEs penetrate the market. So Singapore being a bit of an early adopter of technologies, we use it as a platform to demonstrate technologies. And within the High Commission here, we have a regional position that helps those companies expand further in the region. So we're not necessarily talking only about climate change mitigating measures, but also I can think of the example of Century very recently signed a deal with the Public Utilities Board, and this was in the water treatment space. So, of course, there are when we look at sustainable technologies, clean tech, there's water, air, looking at land opportunities, and a lot of the opportunities tend to be around the infrastructure for the region. Thank you.
It looks like Peter was going to say something.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. Indeed, we see opportunities here in clean tech. There is a desire to move away from coal. The ADB, as I mentioned, is through our support to the ADB, helping retire early coal plants in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. But there's also a possibility for LNG Canada in Prince Rupert. This is a very good market for LNG as an intermediary away from coal. There's a desire for more LNG. Their offshore gas fields are depleting. And I just wanted to mention that Canada and the UNDP, through our development program, are involved in nature-based solutions to reinforce forests and mangroves to absorb carbon. And so this is one of the things that we're doing. Hydro, small hydro, run-of-the-river hydro, these technologies from Canada are also of interest to the Filipinos.
Do I have time for...
You have 12 seconds.
And I would like to speak with probably offline with the gentleman from Vietnam, our ambassador, about forced labor that you started to address, because we're undertaking that right now in Parliament, and there's John McKay has been leading the way on that, and that's going to committee. So I look forward to more conversations, perhaps offline. Thank you.
Possibly the ambassador for Vietnam can get a comment in there when he's answering someone else's question as we move forward. Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5 minutes.
Merci. Ma question ira...
Thank you. My question is for the representative from the High Commission of Singapore. I know that airspace is the main Canadian exports source to Singapore. As you know, Montreal is the third aerospace hub in the world, number 3. And when I say Montreal, I mean the greater metropolitan region, not the actual city alone. To your knowledge, is Singapore interested in further developing its economic relationship with Quebec in this specific area?
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, yes. The answer is clearly that Singapore wishes to further develop its relations in the aerospace sector with Quebec and Canada. I'm a proud Montrealer, of course, and so I'm always happy to support these efforts. There is considerable Canadian presence here. Bombardier, Pratt & Whitney have operations of quite considerable size here. When you think of the aerospace industry, you think of manufacturing new equipment, but Singapore's also a maintenance center for the region for airlines, aircraft. And so the kind of technology we can offer is of interest to them. At the Singapore Airshow, we always have a very large size delegation, obviously limited with COVID, but usually a lot of Canadian companies are interested in exporting their products and services. And the delegation has a considerable proportion of its members coming from the Montreal region. And currently, are there any obstacles or barriers to the development of this relationship? Can anything be on the table during upcoming negotiations or discussions? To my knowledge, no company has told me about any barriers to trade. There's regular barriers to doing business because of the distance and the time change and crossing the ocean, etc. But in terms of trade barriers, to my knowledge, there are not any or none that have been brought to my attention. In 30 seconds, then, thank you very much.
See for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lewis brought up a good point about the containers, but one of the other additional things that we found is that container costs and shipping, and almost like a cartel-like approach of especially medium to small businesses trying to get access, and exponential costs beyond that of even the cost of energy and COVID problems has been escalating significantly. Do you have any comments about that or things we can work on with regards to that? Because I think it's gone underneath the radar quite a bit because the costs are just getting unreal.
Thank you. I think it's hard for me to comment on that because I don't know the cost structure of the shippers. And I believe that shippers have to consider about the revenues that decrease from the fuel services. But I have seen the reports of several countries already launch an investigation into this process. What the government can say is that we totally welcome this very independent study into these commercial actions. If there's any unfair competitions, I think every government should take a step forward to protect all the traders in a fair way. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if we could maybe to the researchers, I'd be interested if they could do a snapshot of the costs of container shipments, because if we're looking at trade expansion in this field, most of it's going to be by shipping. And I just would be interested to get some hard facts on that because I'm hearing horror stories, especially from medium and small businesses. The Costco's, the Walmarts, they're getting into purchasing their own fleets and stuff. Others that are left to their own devices seem to be really having a rise of those things. So that would be something I'd love to have a snapshot on because...
Just a question, Mr. Massey. Did you want the analyst to do that or the department to provide that?
The analyst, I would, but the analyst, I'll let it might want to search out to the department as well too. I'm free, whatever the analyst thinks is the best path forward without putting too much burden.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, we can certainly look into that and prepare something for.
Great. Thank you so much.
Massey.
Thank you. Thank you to the witnesses.
Thank you very much. And on to Mr. Hoback.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Chair, for it's an interesting group of panelists we have here today. You know, one of the first things I look at when I see a new trade agreement is I want to know where there's synergies, where there's Canadian companies working with companies in the countries that you represent or are working in. I wonder if you've identified any of those opportunities and what you would do to see those opportunities come to fruition. I'll just start maybe with whoever wants to start first. Go ahead.
I can jump in on that.
We're getting
Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Steele.
That's all right. Yeah. So, yeah, the trade agreements, you know, from my perspective, work in a couple of ways. One is, you know, the typical reduction of tariffs, which is what most people conceive of when they look at a trade agreement. But there's a component to the trade agreements that also generate interest just in the negotiations themselves and drive parties to try and take a second look. Where we've already had interest in Vietnam, for example, the trade agreements have been, CPTP in particular has really done its job. So you had relationships already with exports of Canadian agri-food, seafood coming into Vietnam, but in a market that was extremely price sensitive and extremely competitive, the extra tariffs that were on those products for Canadian producers were a limiting factor. And I think, as I mentioned in my opening comments, 2019, with the elimination of those tariffs, you started to see the flow of trade coming in and the demand raising fourfold for meat products. We recently had a visit from the Canadian Meat Producers Association, looking to harness that growth. So it was actually that growth that they were starting to see, and it's probably early days for that, made them realize that, well, wait a minute, maybe we should be putting some more attention, more promotion into this market. And so when you've got those partners who are, know a little bit the market, see the growth and are ready to jump at it, that means the trade agreement has done more than its job. I'm seeing the same thing in education, for example. Folks coming out into Vietnam and saying that there's more opportunities here. There's no trade barriers that a free trade agreement deals with on education, but the momentum and seeing that trade flow and business start to flow generates a little bit more positivity and brings more into the market.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Who wants to go next?
As I mentioned that, in fact, the trade agreement between Taiwan and Canada will be a lower hanging fruit because, as I say, that our agricultural products still have the remaining tariff of more than 10%, and you have the best seafood, you have the best agricultural products that very good for our consumptions. So I can believe that Taiwan's memberships in CPTPP will give a very important boost to your export. On the other hand, we do have a lot of synergy. For example, on the clean technology, I forgot to mention that, in fact, your power company, MPI, is one of the most important offshore windmills suppliers in Taiwan. And in that process, I think they have been working with our locals technicians and making sure that Taiwan is the most successful demo site for the MPI. And in fact, MPI is already further expand to the markets in Korea and Japan. So I believe that in the future, we can be your base in the East Asia and for Canada company to explore other markets. Thank you.
In the case, Madam Chair, of the Philippines, there is a free trade agreement negotiation just beginning. Our major offensive interest is agriculture and agri-food. Country cannot feed itself. Our meat exports, particularly pork and beef, way up during the pandemic because of African swine fever. But there's tremendous need for potash fertilizer at the moment. There's a food crisis in the world. Animal feed, animal proteins, and I would add areas of interest. We're trying to diversify, and they are too. And this is a good possibility in areas such as agri-food. Thank you. And fertilizer.
And Madam Chair, to answer the question very directly, yes, absolutely. It is part of our strategy to have a corporate call program, not only to see what the Singapore companies can purchase from us, but what type of arrangement we can have with them. So in infrastructure, for example, Singapore companies are major investors in the region. We see them, and we currently have partnerships with several of them to integrate Canadian products and services. On the financial side, Singapore as well is very present. A lot of financial flow, a lot of money flows through Singapore institutions and into the region. In agriculture, there's Singapore is host to a lot of trading houses, and our ability to export to Singapore through the CPTPP means that it's currently used as a bit of a transition point and a processing point for products such as pulses, for example. And that has led to Singapore companies investing in Canada to try and secure supplies of the products they need to re-export to the region, but all the way to India as well.
One of the concerns we've heard from from egg producers was that they needed a rapid response team based out of Singapore to deal with phyto and non-phyto or phyto and phytosanitary issues that come up. Do you see something that needs to be brought to the ground so we have our CFIA officials that can respond to an issues like in Vietnam with weed seeds and grain and stuff like that? What's your response to that?
Can I get a very brief answer, sir?
Yes, Madam Chair. So currently, our current Agriculture Canada representative or trade commissioners are able to handle. I can only talk about Singapore, but they're able to handle such questions with Singapore. Now with the region, I cannot comment.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Miao for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for all the witnesses here today. I'd like to direct the first question through the chair to His Excellency, Mr. MacArthur. The Philippines is a very important trading partner and a vital economic player in Indo-Pacific region, and that is why we have been studying this motion so far. And just over a month ago, Minister Ng announced the witness of the signing of a MOU between Canada and the Philippines to establish a joint economic commission. I'm wondering if Your Excellency can tell us what your expectations are for this joint economic commission and how do you think it will benefit small and medium-sized business?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Indeed, the Joint Economic Commission will put us on a more level playing field with other foreign countries active in the Philippine market. It will meet every 2 years and intersessionally with the joint overall foreign policy consultations we have every 2 years with the Philippines. One reason we wanted to establish this was to add impetus to the free trade agreement negotiation, which is just beginning, and importantly, to ensure that the voice of business, both chambers of commerce, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, and other chambers of commerce, business organizations, including the agri-food sector, for example, have a chance to integrate themselves with government officials in order that we can look at greater opportunities between the two governments in trade and investment, increasingly investment, because through investment you can trade more. So we are looking forward to the first meeting of the Joint Economic Commission this fall. And that is something that the Department of Trade and Industry of the Philippines and Global Affairs Canada on the trade side are keen to pursue.
Great, thank you very much. And the next question I'd like to direct through the chair to His Excellency, Mr. Sale. First, I want to congratulate to your recent appointment as Canada's ambassador to Vietnam. Can you please tell us a little more about your key priorities as an ambassador and what you have been working on since your appointment?
Madam Chair, thanks for the question. Yeah, indeed, early days. So formulating priorities is part of what I'm doing. But I can tell you that from given my experience in my short time here already, there's probably four main areas of work that I see pursuing as ambassador to Vietnam. The first is with respect to the rules-based international order and peace and security in the region. Vietnam plays a very important role in the region, given its geographic positioning and its role in ASEAN and other organizations. So pursuing like-mindedness with Vietnam where we can, based on common interest, and using that common interest to pursue joint efforts to preserve the rules-based international order is something that will be top of mind for us. And I mean, that includes, consultations on Ukraine, for example, where we are not entirely aligned. The second would be on, supporting Vietnam's efforts to build a more inclusive and open society. Vietnam remains a one country or one party system, and there has been great progress in individual rights and freedoms and in building the institutions that are needed to protect them, but there's more to be done. And so having a frank exchange, but a collaborative working arrangement with the Vietnamese to support their moves through development assistance, through our own advocacy is going to be a key part of that. The third, of course, is advancing our trade relationship and what we're talking about here today, but one that's based on the rules. And Canada and Vietnam certainly have a strong foundation given the CPTPP, Vietnam's strong support for Canada's negotiations for an ASEAN FTA. We have a strong basis for advancing that rules-based trading relationship. And finally, climate change. Climate change pervades all of the pillars of our work here, whether it's development assistance or political advocacy or commercial and technical expertise. So given that Vietnam is one of the world's most vulnerable to climate change, we're here to support and do whatever we can here. So I'm out meeting as many people as I can to test those areas of work and to advance them even further.
Thank you. My time is up.
Mr. Baldinelli for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. My apologies for coming in a bit late and missing your opening comments, but thank you for joining us today. I'd like to find out a little bit more, just building on some of the questions that one of my colleagues had asked about, and just the specific role of your trade offices and the trade commissioners within the offices within the embassies. I'm trying to determine, like, how big would a staff be within one of the embassies in Vietnam, for example, and do you find the allocation of funds for that type of service sufficient to meet the needs and the growing demands, especially as we increase our trade opportunities?
Madam Chair, I can jump in on that one if you like. Vietnam is unique for the region in having 2 points of service for trade commissioners, given the size of the market and the variance. We have the embassy in Hanoi with 5 trade commissioners, and the commercial capital of the country, of course, is in the south in Ho Chi Minh City, where we have, I believe it's 7, 8 trade commissioners. Those 2 teams work seamlessly, and we find that, just from a resource efficiency perspective, is fundamental. So you might find, your aerospace expert based in Hanoi, where government advocacy and information is key. You might find your agriculture and agri-food expert based in Ho Chi Minh, where most of the buyers are. But those 2 teams work seamlessly. We're coming out of a pandemic where I think business as usual wasn't usual. And we're seeing a real huge uptick right now of Canadian companies and institutions coming back into the market, but we're ready for them. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Again, just building on what my colleague had mentioned earlier, and some of the testimony that we've heard from other witnesses, particularly on the agricultural side, and they're talking about the need to create something such as an Indo-Pacific diversification office to handle and look at issues like non-tariff barriers. Is that something that you think would be beneficial, or is that something that you believe could be handled by the officials within your offices currently?
Well, perhaps I could speak to that. So here in the Philippines, embassy of 200 people, we have 15 to 20 people focused on trade commission service work. So on the ground knowledge and networks, Filipino and Canadian staff were able to matchmake based on identified opportunities in the priority sectors that we've laid out. And in the direct answer to your question, so we've had over the past year 4 or 5 blockages to Canadian poultry, pork, and beef exports, and potatoes for that matter. And our trade commissioners, through our relationships with local government here, have solved those issues quite delicately. But in all cases, we've been able to intervene, supported by Agriculture Canada, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Canada Beef, Canada Pork. We have experts in the field, a veterinarian in the region. So this seems to be operating quite well.
In my remaining time, I want to bring forward for the committee's consideration my motion, which I had provided by way of notice to the committee to consider for up to 2 studies the impact of the ArriveCAN application. If you'd like, I could read it back into the record, if you'd like.
If you'd like to go and do that so that everyone is clear as to the motion.
Yes, the notice of motion was provided on May 26, 2022, and it indicates that pursuant to Standing Order 108-2, the committee prioritizes its agenda in order to undertake a study of no less than 2 meetings before the 2022 summer adjournment of the House to study and learn more about the impacts of the ArriveCAN application is having on travelers at Canadian international ports of entry, including land borders, bridge crossings, and airports, and how this application is currently impacting not only Canada's tourism industry, but other sectors of the Canadian economy, which have come to rely on the efficient operation and facilitation of cross-border travel and trade to ensure their economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the committee report its findings and recommendation to the House. And if need be, I have copies in both English and French.
Thank you very much.
Should members need that.
Mr. Bolden, now, okay, I have Mr. Barani. Can I just ask, given the fact that we have our heads of mission that it's 4 o'clock in the morning for them, can make a suggestion that we deal with this at the end of our meeting, that we continue with a bit more testimony?
Please, I'd be pleased to do it. I just wanted to ensure my last round, I got that to your attention.
Right. It's there. And so if we could deal with it at 5:15, this way it'll give us another 20 minutes of questions with our committee members. Everybody's okay with that? All right. Okay, thank you. Okay. Ms. Dillon, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question will be for His Excellency Peter MacArthur. Can you please speak to us a little bit about the state of COVID-19 in the Philippines currently? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines, after more than 2 years of economic lockdown, one of the most severe in the world, is doing very well. Approximately 70 million people have been vaccinated. There was a time last year when there was a shortage of vaccines, but this country has taken masking and physical distancing very seriously. Through the Holy Week here, which brought many people together in churches, through the major political rallies and election day, when 70 million people voted, there has not been an uptick in pandemic. Last time I looked, there's 200 cases in a population of 110 million. So the country is bouncing out of the pandemic relatively well compared to many other countries.
A consular and trade commission services for Canadians been affected thus far and currently?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Our embassy never closed. It's continued all through the pandemic period to offer pandemic and visa services, and indeed evacuated almost 2,000 Canadian tourists in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. So we've continued to operate, and we're currently, most of our staff are in the office on a typical business day.
Thank you, sir, for your responses. My next question is for His Excellency Sean Steele. Can you tell us a little bit about both the current political stability and the state of human rights in Vietnam, and what the short and long-term outlooks are for both?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vietnam, as I mentioned, is a single-party state. Has been relatively stable in its political situation. We have seen, I think, over the last couple of years, some of it perhaps opportunistically because of the pandemic, a closure in digital spaces, so increased censorship, and a lower level of tolerance for political opposition. So political activism, human rights activism, we're seeing an uptick in arrests on that. So these are reasons for concern, concerns that we do let the Vietnamese know that we have. At the same time, there has been, increased opening and progress on things like gender rights and gender equality, ethnic minority rights in the country, and so there's reason for optimism. Coming from where I did working on China, we're always monitoring political developments to see the extent to which, even in a one-party state, there is division of power, there is limits to power. And in the Vietnamese system, you still have a very strong sense of collective leadership where power is diffuse. In fact, some would say almost too diffuse. Provinces have an enormous amount of influence over decision-making, which can sometimes make things slow for business. But we haven't seen a very overt croak-down or consolidation of power the way that we had seen, for example, in China. But it's certainly something that we watch for. Right now, Vietnam is in the midst of an anti-corruption campaign, and whether or not this is going to change the political landscape significantly is yet to be seen. But that's something we're also watching for.
Thank you so very much for your comprehensive responses. And my final questions are going to be for His Excellency Jean-Dominique Yarachi. Can you tell us a little bit about the current business climate for Canadian businesses in Singapore? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. The business climate in Singapore is very good. I mean, the only caveat I would say is that this is a very active city. Our competitors are also here, so one has to make a pretty good pitch to be and show that they are willing to come often and to develop the relationships needed to do business. But by and large, this is why we get a lot of visitors, because Singapore is known as being one of the easiest places in the world. I think they were in the top 5 last year again, and with regards to the ease of doing business.
Perfect. And do you see any increased or potential opportunities for businesses to grow or expand into Singapore? And if so, what sectors would most likely see this?
So we do see more opportunities. We do see more interest, considering the ripples that are happening in the region. So certainly in the financial sector, we see a lot more interest in growing the presence in Singapore. We see it on the agricultural sector as well. The sectors of priorities I named are picked by and large because we see growth in there, and we see growth in especially what we want to do is to find leads for Canadian companies and see whether they're willing to service them here and attract them to the region in our effort to diversify trade.
Okay, thank you very much. On to Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5 minutes, please.
Oui, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur.
Thank you, Ambassador to Canada, for Canada to Vietnam. You said that the current regime is a single-party regime, and it claims to be socialist. Since we're talking about trade relations, would you qualify the Vietnam of 2022 as a market economy?
I mentioned before that the market is pretty stable, perhaps in part because of the stability of the government. Where the challenges come in is in the lack of transparency in the regulatory environment. So laws as they're passed tend to be quite vague, including those that govern trade. And the government has the practice of issuing circulars. So if you're a company operating in Vietnam or doing business in Vietnam, you really have to watch these circulars coming out and actively interpret what that's going to be for your business. Of course, that's part of the service that we provide. But given that constant flow of changing regulations or articulation of regulations and implementation regulations, it's important to really follow. Vietnam has staked its future on being open for business. And it's successfully managed to take some of the investment in manufacturing that's moving out of China, and it's determined to protect that. So we're following closely the developments in the market, but the indicators are positive for now.
Donc, autrement dit,
In other words, you're saying it is a market economy. Do you have any statistics? Given that a few years ago, it was still a planned economy controlled by the state. Today, do you have any information about the weight of the private sector?
I do not have statistics on the proportion of that's private sector, but the state-owned enterprises remain fairly significant, particularly in major industries. You know, one example is the power grid. So where Vietnam has privatized has been in power generation. So they are welcoming private investment. That may be joint ventures. There may be a requirement for a state-owned partner, but they do allow private investment. Where they haven't has been in the grid itself. And that's creating a bit of a bottleneck because, as I mentioned before, they've got renewables coming on stream, but a grid that can't handle the renewables. So they need to open that up in order to fully adapt to a new energy source.
Okay, thank you very much. On to Mr. Massey for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go back to Mr. Liu here and to my questioning from before with regards to cargo, because I guess it's the transportation and logistics side I come from. Because if you expand things and we don't have the capacity, I'm not sure I'm aware of what's your assessment in terms of the jurisdictions you're overseeing in terms of going through customs and so forth. Like, because we have had challenges here on the Canadian side and deficiency in terms of clearing vessels and so forth. So even if we lower the cargo ship costs and the container issues and so forth, we can have them parked at sea for weeks at end. And so that kind of just takes away from what we've worked towards. So I want to, can you give me a snapshot of how the infrastructure is and setup is in other jurisdictions? I'm just curious at that.
I have to apologize because I'm not a transportation expert here. But so far as I know that the experience I participate in the discussion in APEC is that Taiwan's and Canada both have a very advanced single window service. And so that basically there's no bureaucracy problem there. And so far I have heard from our Vancouver office is that the bottleneck is really coming from this domestic transportation of Canada. So I hope there's a problem there can be solved. But if I have found any other information, I'll let you know.
No, that's great, and don't apologize. It's more of a transportation issue, and that's all my questions, Madam Chair. It's just like we set the table and then we can't deliver because of lack of capacity is what I'm looking at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Martel for 5 minutes.
Oui. OK, merci. Ma question est pour
Thank you. I have a question. Singapore imports 90% of the food that its residents consume. Now, there was an article in which it said Canada was losing market share in its wheat exports to Indonesia and China to the detriment of Australia. The Canadian industry has been focusing on the U.S. and Japan. According to you, if the markets to ASEAN countries open up, can Canada be competitive in exporting to Singapore?
Je pense que c'est une question à Madame la Présidente pour laquelle je pense.
Madam Chair, I think this question would call for more in-depth studies. But in theory, yes, Canada is competitive for many products. I can't say that that's the case for all products in Singapore. But we have to keep in mind the fact that I have a 12-hour time difference from you, so we're on the other side of the planet. And what you have to consider are, of course, shipping costs. And I think this is the area in which certain countries who are physically closer to the region can make gains. But when we talk about staples and commodities, there are a lot of factors that have to be considered. Our production capacity, whether there have been any droughts. They're often climate issues which have major impact on our market shares. And a final question for Mr. Steele. What can the Canadian government do to protect our manufacturing sector?
for protection of the domestic manufacturing sector, that's a bit beyond my brief. Certainly, manufacturing in countries like Vietnam is an important part of their sector, and we can see that by our trade stats. Manufactured products, textiles, furniture occupy the majority of Vietnamese exports to Canada. On the other hand, Canadians are increasingly providing the technology and the expertise for that manufacturing process in Vietnam. And that's one thing I think that we haven't quite fully tapped, but that we can certainly facilitate. When those supply chains are carved out, when you've got channels of trade going back and forth, what might be start out as an export may turn out or an import into Canada may turn out to be an opportunity to improve that manufacturing process and build partnerships. And that's something that we're focused on as well.
Merci. Merci.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Martel. Mr. Morrissey, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Since I'm subbing in, but I have an interest in the subject. My question through you, Chair, is to Commissioner Larassi. I would like for you to comment on the aerospace industry in Singapore is more focused on repair and overhaul and heavy maintenance. And at one time, Hong Kong was a significant competitor. Given the state of affairs in Hong Kong, how has that impacted the industry in Singapore?
Madam Chair, I think I would say it's a bit too early to say. We do know of companies transferring operations here. The COVID situation in Hong Kong means that traveling to and from Hong Kong has been a challenge. Now, this said, in the aerospace sector, we're talking about very large investments, and so with regards to, I cannot say that I've seen anything saying that operations have been moving in a major way, or that the center of gravity is changing. This is something we might witness over time.
So, given Singapore's competitive position, where would you see, in light of there will be changes as it impacts Hong Kong, where would you see the best opportunities for growing aerospace trade with Singapore? And I'm familiar with it. I've traveled to Singapore on numerous occasions and have met with your aerospace industry, and Pratt & Whitney is heavily involved, with their industry heavily involved. So where would you see, given changes that will ultimately occur in Hong Kong, those opportunities would be within Singapore for Canadian-based companies?
Madam Chair, I would say that's difficult for me to. It's difficult to look in the future. What I would say, when we look at present opportunities, they tend to be like was mentioned on the maintenance, repair, and overall business. Whether or not those opportunities will grow because of what's happening in the region, not only in Hong Kong but in the region, generally speaking, is difficult for me to say.
What time do I have, Chair?
2 minutes and 20 seconds.
2 minutes. Could you comment on how is Singapore competitive position? Is it staying consistent in that particular market, or has it been changing?
Madam Chair, to my knowledge, Singapore is remaining competitive. Now, one element that worries Singapore and Singaporeans is the cost. Generally, the cost of doing business has increased here. Obviously, if we talk about aerospace, the initial investment is a very expensive, very capital intensive. So once that is done, generally locally it remains quite competitive. But Singaporeans never take for granted a leadership position in anything. When they start, when the government of Singapore sees that they might be worried about their competitive position, they invest, whether it's on training their own population, retraining, or support for various industries.
the single biggest factor driving the cost increases in Singapore? What's it attribute to, labor or infrastructure?
A good question. I'm not sure there's a single one driving increase in cost. The fact that Singapore is a pretty small island when you look at it certainly means that space is at a premium. So we've seen real estate prices go up, and of course, cost of living, as we've seen everywhere around the world, has increased. Singapore being very dependent on imports of energy and food in particular.
Madam Chair, if I could get one final question in, of course, to the ambassador for the Philippines who raised potatoes, and being a Prince Edward Island MP, we did have a few issues with it. Has the issues between Canada and the Philippines been resolved as to the importation of Canadian potatoes, primarily from Prince Edward Island?
Indeed, Madam Chair, I'm happy to report a success story. Over the past 2 years, the Government of Canada, working with the Government of PEI, Agriculture Canada, and a major company here, Universal Robina Corporation, were able to test some seed potatoes in a poorer part of the country. In 1 year, increased yield of potatoes by 27%, improved the quality, the taste, the look, multiple colors of potatoes. So impressed was the Minister of Agriculture here that he ordered an additional 10,000 metric tons of seed potatoes from PEI to come into the country. So yes, we are helping improve impoverished parts of the country by helping farmers locally, thanks to Canadian plant genetics from PEI, on top of potato exports.
Okay, that's it. You have your time. Is there anyone that has one question that's really important they would like to ask some of our distinguished guests? Not seeing any further questions from Mr. Martel?
Oui.
Yeah.
Oui. Monsieur.
Yes. Mr. Yarachi, yes. Last question. To your mind, what can the Canadian government do to support our food exporters without harming local Canadian markets?
Madame la Présidente, je suis pas certain de ces...
I'm not sure I grasp the question. I would like to know what the Canadian government could do to support our food exporters without causing any harm to local Canadian markets.
Oui, je pense qu'en général...
Well, I can't really address what's happening in Canada, but to my knowledge, our Canadian food exports are added value in terms of our production, which could serve the Canadian market. The kind of product that we are selling in Singapore, well, last I looked, Singaporeans consume roughly half of their food in restaurants, in the institutional milieu, restaurants or hotels. And so they tend to buy a lot of high value-added products. Again, there are the commodities that we talked about earlier, which follow international market rules and prices.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you to all our witnesses. The heads of mission, I recognize that you started at 4 o'clock this morning, so thank you so much for accommodating. There was a lot of valuable information that you provided us, so clearly you're not exhausted because you provided a tremendous amount of information for us. So thank you all. Mr. Liu, thank you for being here. So if the witnesses can disconnect, and then we will go on to deal with Mr. Baldonelli's motion. We can go on? Okay. So Mr. Baldonelli has moved his motion that is properly introduced and before us. Mr. Varani had his hand up, so Mr. Varani, you have the floor.
Thank you. If I could just speak to the motion, and I thank Mr. Baldonelli for proposing it. Just a couple of things that I want to note is that one is that the ArriveCan app and the ArriveCan requirements are not new to Canadians nor to Canadian industry. They've been around for some time now, and It is my view that the Canadians and Canadian industry have already started to adapt to it. Secondly, so that puts into question whether a study of this type would be merited. But even if a study of this type would be merited, I guess it begs the question as to where such a study should take place. And I think you can make a very plausible argument that the Industry Committee or even the Transport Committee might be the better place to be studying the ArriveCAN app rather than the Trade Committee. So on that basis, Liberals will be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Massey and then Mr. Savard-Tremblay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only concern with the motion is squeezing it in by the end of the session, but I agree with the motion. We'll be supporting it. You know, I have a border community where we receive lots of questions with regards to ArriveCAN. There's no doubt that there still is some issues out there, and one of the things I would have liked to have seen is we did this before when we had the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative, is that the government actually did a lot of work to promote to Americans how to actually deal with the actual change to the passport laws, even from their own perspective of their country. And I was talking with a number of different border proponents, and I don't think we've done a goodest job on that. So for myself, I'll be supporting this for 2 meetings. It is a fair point about what committee this really belongs at. I think it's a fair point, but it's kind of one of these subject matters that gets booted around from committee to committee and never really gets any attention. So for those reasons, I'll support it, and thanks very much.
Mr. Savard-Tremblay.
Personally, I agree with the criticisms made to date. In other words, that it's something that would be more appropriate in the Industry Committee. The motion talks about travelers and consequences on the tourism industry. That seems to be not our topic, but there is a mention of cross-border trade. So perhaps I could ask a question to the mover. Is there any opening to amending this so that we only deal with the cross-border trade aspect, in which case it could be dealt with in one session rather than 2? Is there any openness to that? I'm just putting the idea out there. But in its current state, I would not accept this motion. But if there's openness to modifying it and amending it, then so that we could focus on the topic which belongs to our committee, then why not?
Hear Mr. Lewis and then go to Mr. Baldinelli to respond.
Whatever you like, Madam Chair.
If you'd like to make your comment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to Mr. Baldinelli. I think it's a great motion, and I give a lot of credit to my honourable colleague at the very end of this desk, Mr. Massey. I mean, him and I are situated right next to the busiest international border in North America, and his office, I'm sure, is very much like my office, Madam Chair, and that we are inundated by the same businesses that specifically the member from the block is speaking to specifically. So it's vital. We need two studies. What we need is this to be gone, quite frankly, but at least 2 days of study is going to be vital to this. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have Mr. Hoback, and yes, and then I'm going to go back to Mr. Baldinelli.
Chair, if you want to go to Mr. Baldinelli first to entertain the idea of amending the motion, I'd be curious to see where that conversation goes before I speak.
Okay, Mr. Baldinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for my colleagues' consideration. The tourism sector, I'd like it to remain part of this motion. It is an import-export sector. I mean, it's a $105 billion GDP for our Canadian economy, employs 1 in 10. In my community alone, $2.4 billion is generated in tourism receipts. We'll get about 23% of our visitor base is American that will visit my community, but over 50% of that revenue that's generated in my community comes from those American visitors. What we're not doing is properly facilitating the trade that and the flow of traffic that's coming into the from our American visitors to Canada. For example, the recent Statistics Canada data that came in for March on international visitation, there were 465,000 Americans visited in March 2022. That's up from 95,000 from the year before. But you go back to 2019, it was 1.5 million Americans visited in 2019, which was our best tourism year ever in Canada. Destination Canada is already saying we're not going to be getting back to a tourism recovery until 2025, 2026 at the earliest. My community alone, there's 40,000 people that work in the tourism community, 16,000 hotel rooms. What they depend upon is open borders. And right now, on the American long weekend, we were hearing of 2.5-hour border delays. I've got council resolutions from the town of Fort Erie, from the city of Niagara Falls, advocating for a ArriveCAN app to be rescinded and dropped. My disappointment was to see, as we're moving into a tourism recovery, the government, after not committing $1 this year to tourism recovery, it did commit monies to Indigenous tourism, but they committed $1 billion last year. And again, consider, Niagara Falls generates $2.4 billion when the government committed only $1 billion last year. So, much to my surprise, the government's committing $25 billion to the ArriveCAN application. And for me, I'm trying to determine and find from the government, and I've yet to provide and be provided with an answer on where the public health benefit rests with the ArriveCAN application. If it's meant to facilitate traffic flow and border crossings, it's doing a poor job of that. We're hearing it at airports. We're hearing it at border crossings. We're hearing it from our industry representatives who are caught in those 2.5-hour border delays. We shouldn't be doing that. It should take seconds and not minutes to cross the border. We've had representations from our 2 international border commissions who have said ArriveCAN needs to be replaced or augmented and changed. And so that's why I've presented this motion, Madam Chair, for our committee's consideration.
Thank you very much. Back to Mr. Hoback and then Mr. Varani.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on. We're not hearing you, Mr. Hoback.
There we go. Let's try that again. This surface I've got doesn't have a good mouse pad. I see your considerations from the block member and some of his concerns, but tourism is part of trade, and it is part of the trade committee because trade in tourism is an actual industry in itself. That's why maybe it should be included, but only as part of a bigger study, or like you're saying, when it comes to trade implications. And reality is, when business people can't travel across the border because they're in huge lineups, or refuse to cross the border because of the impression of huge lineups that Arrive Canada app is creating, that's a problem that affects our business community quite directly. And we're hearing it quite consistently from people who are traveling through Pearson, especially even through Montreal and Vancouver and Calgary, where I've been talking to Americans. They're saying, we're not going to travel up to Canada right now. We'll just wait because it's a gong show. And this Arrive Canada app, they just kind of look and go, what the heck is that? Like, what do I do there? This is not something that's being deemed as acceptable. Now, people are tolerating it. I would agree with that comment, but they're tolerating it because it's forced upon them. And they're questioning what useful purpose it actually serves in helping the government keep Canadians safer. It serves no purpose at all at this point in time. So, I'd like to see this study go forward. I think it's important. If we need to make some adjustments on time to accommodate, maybe a meeting now and a meeting again in the fall to see an evaluation of how the summer went and how business travel happened through the summer, maybe that's something we could consider. But I think this is very important that it come into this committee and be dealt with.
Okay. Mr. Varani?
So 2 points. The first point is that it would reject categorically the assertion that the government has been failing to address the needs of the tourism sector. The hospitality sector, the tourism sector, and all hardest hit sectors were extensively provided for during the course of the pandemic, and we continue to support them. So that's the first point. The second point is that as I hear more members of the official opposition speak, it just buttresses the argument that, in fact, what we have is an ideological opposition to the ArriveCAN app and the public health evidence that substantiates it. The terms public health were used by both Mr. Baldinelli and Mr. Hoback, which then I would add to my initial list that perhaps this should be properly studied at the Health Committee. So you now have potentially 3 or 4 different avenues to studying this entity: the industry, transport, as I mentioned, and now health, because if the actual concern, as underscored by the members of the official opposition, is what public health evidence underscores or provides the rationale for the ArriveCAN app, then they should ask that at the Health Committee, which underscores the point that does not belong at this committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Not seeing any other comments or.
Chair, I have a hand up.
I'm sorry, Mr. But your little hand is like way over there. I thought it was a decoration on the wall, so don't hesitate to jump in there. Go ahead, Mr. Okay, Mr. Hoback and then Mr. Savard-Tremblay, and keep your eye on the clock.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Mr. Savard-Tremblay, if you want to go in front of me, that's fine. I lost you now. Again, selective hearing by the Liberals. This belongs in this committee at this point in time. He can pick and choose what he wants to hear out of the opposition. Reality is business community is really having major issues with this Arrive Canada app, and it is going to impact our trade. So this is a proper committee because, like Mr. Massey had said, they keep punting it from committee to committee, so nobody will look at it. Well, we need to look at it. It's very important.
Okay, Mr. Savard-Tremblay.
To follow up on my previous comment, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion.
Please do. Go ahead.
I would move that we remove everything after Arrive Can, so having an impact on travelers, and we stop striking, and that after we say on the sectors of the Canadian economy which have come to rely on the efficient operation, everything else is okay. And we also change 2 meetings into 1 meeting. I don't know if that's working, if you're understanding the interpretation of my changes. Yes?
The way the block would like to see it pronounced, just so I could hear the entire motion completely.
I'm just waiting for our clerk to have it down clearly so that everyone knows exactly what it is we're voting on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Savard-Tremblay, vous allez me corriger si...
Mrs. Savard-Tremblay, please correct me if I've missed something.
Hold on from just, can you read it out so we're clear?
Okay.
Je vais le lire en...
I'm going to read it in French, Mr. Savard-Tremblay, that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee prioritized its agenda in order to undertake a study of no less than 1 meeting before the 2022 summer adjournment of the House to study and learn more about the impacts the Arrive Can application is having on the sectors of Canada's industry and economy which depend on the efficient operation and facilitation of cross-border travel and trade to ensure their economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House.
Two meetings, and I think it's a terrific motion that way.
Okay, so it reduces it to 1 meeting and makes a few changes there. Mr.
So I'm
Roland,
proposing.
you look like you're not clear. Would you want to hold? Do you want to hold this down until the beginning of Wednesday's meeting, or
No. I'm
ready
fine
to-
with
okay.
the amendment to change the wording. My concern is I would rather and prefer 2 meetings instead of 1. And to Mr. Hoback's suggestion, perhaps we could do one before the summer recess and possibly one after.
Okay, Mr. Massey?
I'm just asking for an amendment to the sub-amendment being 2 meetings. So if it's a friendly amendment, we can just go ahead with 2, the one or vote. If it's a friendly to my friend here, who I think has made a really good proposal.
And you'd like to see it stay at 2 meetings?
Yes.
And Mr. Savard-Tremblay is saying 1 meeting.
Yeah. If he's okay with my amendment to that, then we're good to go.
Clarification. So I understood Mr. Perron Savard-Tremblay's amendment. I do not understand what Mr. Massey is
Mr.
suggesting.
Massey is saying that he's moving a sub-amendment that he wants to see 2 meetings, not 1 meeting. Right?
I'm comfortable with the wording change.
All before the summer recess.
Well,
Well,
like I
it'll
said,
have-
we could discuss. We could have one before the summer recess, and we could have one after.
Yes, I think
Mais c'est
that's...
pour ça aussi d'ailleurs que on parle.
Well, yes, that's why it says no less than. We could just have one meeting and then decide what we do after that. And then we can agree on what happens afterwards.
And, I mean, if you're committing to 2 meetings and have one now and one as soon as we come back in the fall.
I would just reiterate that I just think logistically it's going to be tough to get in 2 meetings prior to the summer adjournment. Right?
I've got the calendar.
I'll take my amendment off the table, and that's fine. That's fine.
Yep.
So
We can live with
leave it. He had it good the first time.
Then leave it.
So it's only, but just a minute, let's be clear. Are we talking about only 1 meeting period, or are we talking about 1 meeting later on?
La manière dont c'est écrit, on parle de.
The way it's drafted, it says no less than, so that means at least one. We start with one, and then we can always decide later if we want more.
Okay. Madam Clerk, clear?
Yep.
Is any,
Now we're talking about what Monsieur Savard Tremblay suggested, which is 1 meeting prior to the summer adjournment.
all right. We just want to make sure everything is clear so everybody knows exactly what it is that, can you say that out loud? Yes, we want to read it out again. Okay. Please do that.
Now in English, that pursuant to Meeting Order 1082, the committee prioritized its agenda in order to undertake a study of at least 1 meeting before the 2022 summer adjournment of the House to study and learn more about the impacts of the ArriveCAN application is having on sectors of the Canadian economy which have come to rely on the efficient operation and facilitation of cross-border travel and trade to ensure their economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House.
Can I make a, should we add on there if resources permit? What happens if we aren't able to do it? Hey, you want to do it, we'll do it, even if we do it at 8 o'clock at night. If the
Well,
committee passes
I think
the
that
motion.
should actually be a logical amendment, Madam Chair.
But
Should
should
resources
resources be allowed to do
Yeah.
it otherwise? All right, okay.
I'd like
Sure.
to
The problem I have with that is it leaves it ambiguous. I think you can't add that amendment. I think we want to see this happen before spring break or summer break. So we're gonna have to try to do everything we can to make it happen. Now, if you can't, you can't. But I don't think you need to put that in the motion.
I think we should vote on whether we're adding the word "should resources permit."
Okay, so we have to vote on the issue of resources if resources are appropriate that Mr. Varani mentioned. So all those in favor of the amendment suggested by Mr. Varani, of if resources allow?
No.
Okay, so no is Mr. Hoback, Mr. Baldinelli, Mr. Martel, and Mr. Lewis are for, but the sub-amendment or whatever they call it carries. All right, now, we go on to the amendment from
we need clarification.
resources section. Well, that's up to you to figure that out. Sorry, Madam Clerk. We've asked
in the
if you figure
motion,
it
would
out.
you like that wording to go?
Vote sur le sous-amendement.
It's voting on the sub-amendment.
Capable hands, Madam Clerk.
Put it at the end.
Put it at the end. All right, and now we're going to vote on Mr. Savard Tremblay's
Amendment as amended.
amendment that's been amended by the resources. All right, all those in favor of? Okay, so it carries. Look at this. Gentlemen, you did a wonderful job. So
Can
now
I just
the
do a quick
amendment,
point of order?
now the motion as amended. Oh, Colton,
C'est la motion telle qu'amendée.
Is it the motion as amended, the amendment, or the final motion?
we just voted on yours. Now we're going to vote on Mr. Baldinelli's motion as amended.
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Massey?
I have a lot of faith, Madam Chair, that if you can find time for this, you'll do it, and I think that you've handled the committee very well. So resources provided gives you a lot of latitude in terms of time and when we can do this. Like, I'm open book in terms of getting this done, even if it's not traditional committee time. So I think that's important that there's confidence here for that.
So all motion, please raise your hands. All right. So we've been trying to do heroic work here just in case it passed. So we would ask that witnesses, the names of witnesses be in by Wednesday evening, if 4 p.m. for us to go forward with this motion that we have just passed. All right, so all witnesses for this study should be in by Wednesday at 4 p.m. of this week. And we're going to try to ensure that we have this meeting. All right? Okay, thank you all very much. Move adjournment.
Thanks, Chair.